Here, I've got a smart answer. For those who haven't used smart answers before, they're created with this button up here. This particular one is a yes or no type answer. And that means that the form user gets to choose from a drop-down box here a yes or a no. In this form, depending on the answer here, I either want to include this paragraph that says the applicant is a U.S. citizen, or I want to include this paragraph if the applicant is not a U.S. citizen. So I'll select the paragraph that's going to become conditional, click the condition button. Actually, before I do this, I want to show you something about paragraph marks. So I'm going to turn on the display of paragraph marks here. What that does is makes these paragraph marks visible at the end of paragraphs, because I want to point out when I select this paragraph to make it conditional, I don't want to stop after the period. I want to select the paragraph mark too. That way, when this paragraph is removed, it's going to close up the gap, and I won't end up with extra space between paragraphs. I'm going to do this the wrong way first, and then I'm going to correct it so you can see what I'm talking about when I say that. If I do it the wrong way, I don't include the paragraph mark. And I create a condition for this paragraph. And I want this condition to include the paragraph if the answer is yes. Show text if answer is yes. And I want to include this paragraph if the answer is no, and I am doing this one incorrectly as well. Condition if the answer is no. The problem with the way I've done this is when I fill in the form, I end up with a gap. See this extra paragraph here? I'd really like that gap to be removed. So I'm going to reset, and I'm going to undo what I did before. Get rid of the previous condition. And now I'm going to do it correctly. I select the whole paragraph, including the paragraph mark, create the condition. In this case, the answer is yes. Notice that the closing condition mark down here, this closing bracket, appears at the beginning of the next line. That's because this paragraph symbol is included within the condition, which is the way I want it. And here I'll select this paragraph, add the condition for when the answer is no. And again, the closing bracket appears at the beginning of the next line. That looks weird at first, but after a while you'll get used to it, and you'll be able to just eyeball a form and see that, oh yeah, this is going to work because it's going to remove that paragraph mark when it's supposed to. I'll fill this in now with an answer yes. We get the applicant is a U.S. citizen, and if we change the answer to no and refill, we get the applicant is not a U.S. citizen, just as intended. I'm going to close that one and move to our next example of a different sort of smart answer. Close this. And the next one is here. Here, I've got a smart answer, which is a choice type answer. That means that a list of choices is presented to the form user. This is a similar form, but it's constructed in a different way. Again, I want this paragraph to be included when the answer is United States, and I want this paragraph included when the answer is anything other than the United States. So I'll select this paragraph and make it conditional based on my country question, which is this one here. And notice that this looks different now. That's because this is a different type of answer. I get a different screen here depending on what type of answer I've selected. Since this is a choice type answer, I get this interface and I can say, I want this sentence to appear only when any of these are chosen, United States. And I want this paragraph to appear only when only when none of these are chosen, United States. I could also say only when any of these are chosen, Argentina, Belgium, Canada, but it's a little more straightforward, I think, and fewer boxes to check if I go with this arrangement. Show this sentence only when none of these are chosen, United States. There's my conditions. So when I answer United States and fill in the form, I get that paragraph. And if I choose any other country on the list and fill in the form, I get that paragraph. That covers choice type answers. Next up, we have this one. This is a text with pronoun type answer, which means the form user gets to choose a pronoun from this drop-down box when they fill in the form. In this form, when the signer is an individual, I'd like to include this signature. And when the signer is a corporation, I want to include this signature. That, whether it's an individual or not, can be determined just by looking at what pronoun has been selected for the seller. So I'll create a condition here. I want to include that signature only when the seller name, this is the seller name question here, only when the seller name pronoun, notice that because this is a pronoun type answer, I have an additional choice here that I didn't have before. I want to show this sentence only when the pronoun is either he or she. And I'll click done. And I want to include this signature only on the certain conditions when the seller name pronoun is not he or she. And I'll click done. So now, filled in with an individual's name like this, when I click the fill button, I get a signature for an individual, like so. And if it turns out this is actually a company, then the person filling in the form would choose it as a pronoun, and they would also be asked to fill in a signer's name, Joe Smith, and a signer's job title. And when I click the fill button, I end up with a completely different signature block. That's a condition based on a text with pronoun type answer. Our next one is, this smart answer is let's find out, a list type answer. It's a list of text boxes. And I'm asking for all shareholders. When there's only one shareholder in the list, I would like to include this paragraph. And when there's more than one shareholder in the list, I want to include this paragraph. So I'll select the first paragraph and make it conditional. Because this is a list type answer, I get a different choice up here at the top. I want to show this paragraph only when the list contains exactly one item. That happens to be the default choice. I'll click done there. And I want this paragraph to appear. Condition, add, only when the list contains more than one item. These up and down arrows here are used to increment that number up and down. Done. So now since I have 3 shareholders included, when I click the fill button, I get this sentence. And if I were to just have one shareholder, let me remove a couple of those and fill it in, then I get this sentence. That's a condition based on a list type answer. The next the next 2 items here are getting pretty sophisticated. Don't be alarmed. Just keep these in mind for the future if you're not already creating forms that are this sophisticated, just to show you possibilities for the future. But some of you are already creating very sophisticated forms, so this will come in handy. The first one, I have two answers here. These are simple text type answers. They're both dates. And what I want to do in this form is say if the lease expires before the tax is due, I want to have the landlord pay the tax. But if the lease expires after the tax is due, I want to have the tenant pay the tax. So this word or this word, that's my two conditions. First, I'll select the word landlord and add a condition to it. I want the word landlord to appear only if the lease expires, add condition, only if the lease expires earlier than the tax is due. And here I can choose the tax due date. The thing that's interesting about this is I don't have to know when the tax is due. I'm asking for that information from the form user. As the form creator, I can just put in a placeholder here for whatever the form user types into the tax due answer. As the form creator, I can type a particular date here if I want to, if it's appropriate, but in some cases you won't know as the form creator what date you're comparing against. So in that case, you'll ask the form user to supply the date, and you'll just choose that answer. And I'll click Done here. I'll get rid of this slash character that I don't need, select the word tenant, and I want the word tenant to appear only when the lease expiration date is later than the tax due date, which is here. Click Done. So the way it's filled in now, the tax due date is earlier than the lease expiration date. So we end up with the tenant paying the taxes. And I can see that I left an extra bracket character in there, so I'm going to fix that. I'll reset the form, delete that extra bracket character. And let's try it the other way. If the lease expiration date is before the tax due date, and I fill in the form, then I end up with the landlord paying the taxes. So that's pretty sophisticated. You're comparing two answers here. You can also do comparisons between text answers and number answers. So you can say if this number is greater than that number, include some text, or you can say if this text is, say, alphabetically earlier than that text, then I want to include a particular sentence. Now I'll move on to another one that's pretty sophisticated. We're just about getting to the end of our various types of conditions here. This one, oh yeah. This form asks the form user to list all the beneficiaries here, and then it also asks whether each beneficiary is a minor or not. This is a linked list for people who are keeping score here. And when I fill in the form, I get a result like this. The beneficiaries are this person, that person, and the other person. As the form creator, what I would like to do is alter this sentence so that it indicates which of the beneficiaries are minors. I'm going to reset the form here. If you haven't worked with custom lists before, we have one of the videos on our video our video support page on the website is all about creating custom lists. So I'm not going to explain too much what I'm doing here because you can refer to that. But I am modifying this list to include the words a minor, but I only want those words to appear when yes is selected for that particular beneficiary. So since that is going to be a conditional bit of text, I'll select it and add a condition to it. Condition. And it's going to be based on the Benny minor question. Add condition. And because this item appears in a list, I get a box here that we haven't seen yet. I want to show these words a minor only when the answer is yes for this item in the list, the current item in the list. I could also check the previous item, the next item, the first item, or the last item in the list. But in almost all cases, you'll want to look at the current item in the list. Done. That means these words are only going to appear when that item in the list, that beneficiary, happens to be a minor. I'm going to copy that whole little condition there. I just pressed Control-C to copy, and I'm going to paste that in the second clause of the list and in the third clause of the list as well, so that it'll work for all three clauses. Now when I fill in the form, click Fill, I end up with a designation here that tells me that Carol Otis is a minor, just as indicated down here in the choices. That's pretty sophisticated. It doesn't get much more complicated than that. You'll want to be familiar with custom lists, and then just be aware of the fact that you can add conditions that apply to a particular item in a list. That's the important thing to bring away from this. Next, I have this one is, oh yes, this is our last of the complex ones. This one uses a feature called a derived answer. We have a video on our website that's all about derived answers, so I'm not going to explain that part of it, but I will show you the condition that I'm applying to it. If we fill in this form just as is, we end up with a list of items purchased and a price for each one. The form tool is getting these prices from a master list, another nice feature. Here I have a master list of items for sale, which is just a list of items and prices, and that's where these numbers are coming from. And then the form tool is using a math field here to total up all of these and give us a total. The conditional part of this is, as the form creator, I'm going to reset this form. As the form creator, I would like this paragraph to appear only when this total number is $20 or more. Your inclination is probably to select that paragraph and hit the condition button. And I want to add a condition based on purchases for when the total is $20. But see how I'm really not given an appropriate choice here. This is creating a condition based on how many items are in the list. But I want a condition based on the total price, which just I have no way to get at it here. That's because conditions can only be based on answers that appear here in the Q&A table. In this case, the total price doesn't appear anywhere as an answer. So I have to do another step. I'm going to remove that condition I just created. And before I can create a useful condition here, I have to add another row to my Q&A table. I'm going to add a row called total. This is going to be a derived answer. I'm just going to put a note to myself here of what it is, total price for all purchases. Derived answers are hidden from form users. They're just in here for form creators so that they can do some fancy work behind the scenes. So to turn this into a derived answer, I click the Smart Answer button, choose Derived Answer, OK. Now that this is a derived answer, I can grab anything I want. In this case, I want the total value. I'll copy that field and paste it down here in the answer box. You can't do that with other types of answers, but derived answers are special. And now when I fill in the form, you can see that I end up with the total appearing not only up here in the document, but also down here in this answer, which is exactly what I need. I'm going to reset the form. And now I can select this paragraph and make it conditional and have it based on this total, add condition. And I want it to this paragraph to appear when the total value is more than $19.99. Done. Now when I fill in my form, I have my paragraph included because the total is $49.97, But if I take out, let's see, crank and filter are expensive, so let's change those to a nut and a bolt and fill in the form again. Now, since the total is less than $20, the paragraph has been removed. The other nice thing about derived answers is before you save this form as the form creator, you should click the Show Hide button, and that will hide that derived answer from the form user so that it doesn't confuse them, and it just gets answered in the background. They don't even have to worry about it.